here we are in the Serapeum. You can see one of the ones that hasn't completed its journey to its spot it's supposed to end up in. This is one of many 70 to 100 ton boxes made of solid granite and other very hard rock. We're going to look at some evidence of super high technology here at the Serapeum with Youssef Aouian, with Jim Vieira, both stonemasons, to see what we can see. So we're just inside the Serapeum now, just walking down towards the main area. Just looked at one of the main boxes, but this is incredible. These could have been here for thousands of years. These huge granite and diorite sarcophagi, which were thought to be burials of the Apis bull, but there isn't really any evidence for this except for one report where a mummified bull was supposed to have been found.
We are in a subterranean structure. The ceiling is bedrock, the walls are bedrock. These are modernly renovated, and there is also evidence of older renovation. The lid we saw out there seems to be the missing part of this box over here. So usually they say the lid and the box is in the range of 100 tons. And this is a great challenge. But could the dynastic Egyptians do that? Yeah. Outside a subterranean structure, some weights were moved that is over 100 tons. Why? Let's think of it or imagine together how many men you need to drag a ton. Between 10 and 15 men to drag a ton. Dragging it is easier than lifting it, okay? So if this box, let's say 50 tons, not 70 tons, because the minimum size, this is one of the large ones, there are smaller ones. Let's take the challenge of 50 tons. And you would need between 500 and 750 men. That's not bad. You can do that. You can tie the box with ropes and have these people, like that. So you can have this little army of strong men dragging that outside in the open. But the challenge here truly is how can you have this force here in a subterranean structure like that?
So you can see this is all, and the thing is, how did they get these boxes in here? Now we're not looking at one of the niches, but when we do, you're going to see this is cut out of the limestone, right? So they didn't bring them, they didn't drop them in, right? And you can see the hallways. Look at the size of this box, right? So if you got all these men dragging it, right? That's one thing. Okay, maybe they can drag it down the hall, maybe, right? But you see the niches. These boxes go right up to the edge of the wall. Where are you going to put 200 men, 300 men. They talk 60,000 men. Where are they going to be to drag these boxes in? So we know they couldn't have dragged the boxes in. How did they get them in? Hakim would have said, well, they just raised them and flew them in, right?
Right.
Even then, you've got straight edge corners. You've got 90-degree turns to get into these little niches. And then they're down. We're standing up, and you're going to see they're down a level. How does this happen? We talked to the engineer. There was a grand opening. We were here when they opened this, I think, 3 years ago. And we asked him. He'd worked on it for 18 years. How did they do it? Right? He's the engineer, architectural engineer. He just shook his head and said, we don't have any idea. That speaks volumes there. But take a look with your own eyes. Mm-hmm. You're going to see this is impossible.
The difference between the width of the box and the width of the corridor is around 2 feet only. So if this box is in the middle of the corridor, all the space you're going to have is only 2 feet. 1 feet here or 1 feet there. So, believe me, we are 20 or 25. And we are already filling the corridor. So imagine if you want to have here between 500 and 750 men. There is no space. So from my point of view, if I wanted to achieve this, or if I wanted to find the plan to achieve this with and use the big amount of people, I can carve these open to the air and then fill the space with sand, and then I will use my little army of strong men to drag the box to the location I want, after I mark it, of course, and then release the sand and lower the box. This was going to be very functional. And then build the ceiling. But the fact that we have here, the entire structure is a subterranean structure. That means there is no way to escape moving into these corridors with these megalithic boxes. And this is, in my opinion, more challenging than how they were carved or how the tunnels were also carved, because it's a big challenge. Here, there are no shafts and there is no light. If we turn off this light, we wouldn't be able to see each other. So imagine if you're trying to achieve this with a torch. There is no exhaust. So they said it might be olive oil. There is an answer for everything, of course. And reflecting with mirrors is not going to last for a long time. The amazing thing, the work of Dr. Christopher Dunn, the engineer, showed without a doubt that actually these boxes were being manufactured down here. That adds to the challenge. It's not manufactured outside and then brought here. And of course, this is like, it's going to be obvious when we see there are some of them that's still unfinished. So there is no doubt that they were manufactured down here.
So Chris Dunn has done some amazing work on the Serapeum. He's been in here with his tools inside some of the chambers, inside some of the sarcophagi rather, and actually measured it up and found that they're like hermetically sealed. They're incredibly precise, outrageous precision, but far beyond what you would require to bury a bull in a sort of sacred way. There's something quite amazing about these.
If we want to look at the inscriptions, this one has one of the best inscriptions, but it's not a lot. There is one that they allow us. You see it? Jedmidu ha Uzir Ha'abi. The word Uzir Ha'abi, you see the bull in the middle?
Yeah.
There is 3 signs here. One looks like a rope, and one looks like an angle, and one rectangular.
Yeah.
This is the name Ha'abi, which is one of the knitters that is combined with the river. And Uzir, of course, is Osiris. You see the eye? There is an eye and a chair and a seated figure behind it. This is the hieroglyphics or the Medu knitter for Uzir. So Uzir Ha'abi is where the word Serapis for the Greeks came from. And this is easy if you follow the pronunciation. Ha'abi. Can you pronounce it? Can you say Ha'abi? Ha'abi. The Greeks couldn't pronounce it like the ancient Egyptian did. So instead of the ha, it's not something that they have in their vocabularies or pronunciation or phonetics. So they used the a instead of it. And then the influence of the Greek civilization is always to add the s under any name, noun, or verb or anything. So Isit is the original pronunciation, became Isis. Ozir became Osiris. Hor became Horus. And this is where, and of course all the names we have, Heliopolis, Necropolis, all these are Greek labels. So Ha'abi is where the word Apis came from. Apis bull. Yeah, it's supposed to be, has connection to some like a sacred bull that will only appear once every certain era, or like they had a sign on the bull that will make them recognize which one is it. So it would be mummified in Memphis and then brought all the way here through the Sphinx Avenue. And remember, this had to be brought all the way from Aswan. Aswan is 1,000 kilometers. Granite, yeah. Single solid piece, of course. Less than 20% quartz is in it, according to what we learned from our teacher, Susan Moore. What we can see here, we don't see saw marks here. We see tip that looks more like a chisel mark. You see that? It's all over it. So this is the method that they used to shape one layer after another. Bigger tip, and then finer, and then finer, and then... So the bigger tip, of course, to move bigger chunks. And then you have a smaller tip, and then you have a smaller tip. And this is how you do the levels. How you reach from this rough surface to a smoother surface. But the final stage, which causes the granite to be mysterious. And according to the mainstream story, it was done by sand and water and a piece of rock. As a stone carver, I say what? Good luck with that.
So the insides of this are
This is very possibly an ancient seed bank. This was a place for housing seeds. You're in a consciousness that understands it's going to go through a development and a catastrophe, as we have it at the end of every cycle. What do you do? And what are we doing today? We have seed banks all over the world saving the DNA, the seeds of all the agriculture, the animals, and human life forms. Well, take a look at these boxes and see if they're sealed. You have 60-ton boxes with 20-ton lids, and they're perfectly sealed and housing something that would have remained perfectly charged. Well, again, take a look at the walls. There are so many things pointing. You have east to west hallways with north to south direction of the boxes, aligned to the magnetic north.
All of them were found open like that when Auguste Mariette, the archaeologist, found the site, and except one. So he used the explosives. We look at the place, and supposedly each box, it was ordered to be made for a special occasion, which is the apis boon mummification and all that. But when we look generally, it feels to me that the whole structure is planned. We see sequence, one after another, and we don't find two rooms facing each other. And when we go down to the one we are able to go around, it's fairly aligned with the coordinate, not just put here randomly. This is the original floor. They covered it with wood because just by walking in this, as you can see, the bedrock is very soft. Just by walking in that, lots of dust will come up. Here we can see that they once recycled stone from the structures out there, like the New Kingdom tombs. They took the fine limestone and shaped it as tiles. And in order to case these walls with it, they add this thick layer of plaster. The stone fell, or was taken to be reused once again, and all we find is the layer of plaster with the print of the tiles that used to be on top.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, the granite stone it contains three main things: Velspar, sometimes pink and white, and mica, which is the black color, and the quartz. This is what this rock contains. Depends on the levels of quartz, then you can label it. Depends. So this will be probably called porphyritic diorite, in my opinion. And one thing we can notice, there is always two indentations on the side of the box. For what, we don't know, but it looks like the renovation came on top of it. So they were already here when they made the renovation with the tiles, but did they house another pieces with another material that used to do some kind of interaction with the box itself? Maybe. Usually in the stone, there are natural cracks. And to avoid this crack to extend in the stone, we must empty it out. And what we are looking at here is the result of emptying out a natural crack so it wouldn't extend under pressure or vibration. So it's more than the look, functionality. In my opinion, these are inscriptions that is added later to this books in order to use it for Ozir Habi again. But this is what mainstream Egyptologists will use to date and relate and understand what was the function of the books by translating the hieroglyphs. So we will see through our journey overwhelming amount of evidence, conclusive evidence that shows that inscriptions can be added later. So in my heart, I cannot depend on this, what I can label as graffiti, very crude inscriptions on a very good machining. So this is the conflict. How come? Where is the tool that created this? Where is the builders of that? And because the builders of that could do much better. Even that we have some work hieroglyphs of on granite stone that we will see in Luxor and many other places that is very beautiful and deep and relief and everything. So don't take this as a scale for the dynastic Egyptians. This is a good example to show one of the worst examples of inscriptions was one of the very good examples of machining. There are more advanced machining than that is reflecting power tools. So we knew that with the tip and one level after another, they reach it from these tool marks down here. How did they reach until that smooth surface over here? But in other boxes like the one in the Great Pyramid, for a good example, there is no sequence of tools. There is one cut. One saw cut leaves the smooth, accurate surface, one cut, shiny and everything. Here we can see one tool and then finer tip as we were just examining the other unfinished one. The polishing. The polishing, as I said, according to the mainstream, happened with a piece of rock and sand and water. And of course, it will be shiny like this as long as it's wet. After the water vaporizes, it will become scratchy and whiter. You wouldn't be able to see the structure of the stone, like the pieces of porphyr here, porphyritic pieces like this of white feldspar. So we look at the base of the lid from this side, and we can see that this part is smooth, but it's not shiny. You see the difference? Huh? And then we look at the edges, and we can notice something interesting. As if some kind of a liquid came down from the top and formed some drops down here. So you see here is you see that? It looks like some liquid moved like that, and you know that? Huh? And this one too? Yeah. So it looks like they used some kind of a liquid to give this shiny layer, and this liquid came down here, so it made this part shiny, but it didn't make that shiny.
How do modern...
You can notice here some striations, but very random. If you look here, see there are fine striations here.
Yeah.
Huh? But they are random. They are running in every direction.
Yeah.
Some are going this way. They look half circular. Huh? You see him? This is something different than what we're going to see on the books of the Great Pyramid and the unfinished books also in the Egyptian Museum. If you look here, see there are fine striations here.
Yeah.
Huh? But they are random. They are running in every direction.
Yeah.
Some are going this way. They look half circular. Huh? You see him?
The ancient socks.
This is something different than what we're going to see on the books of the Great Pyramid and the unfinished books also in the Egyptian Museum. And here, of course, the famous Serikh that's supposed to have the name doesn't have a name. And the famous sheep that's supposed to have the name doesn't have a name. King nothing. But this is part of the priest's game. They can add the decoration and wait. When Hugh comes, and then I can tell him, Hugh, you will give me part of your harvest every year, or you will spare me from taxes because I made this specially for you, my king. Then you... and then academics will come later and look at the name, and then date the writings, and the books, and the entire site to the name. And if there is an older name, they will say the older name started it, the second one finished it, or the older name made it, the second one usurped it. It's like that. In my opinion, there are many cases that the writings is what we depend on, but it's not the conclusive evidence to date and relate and understand the function. Simply because it can be added later in order to reuse.